All right, everybody, our next video is going to focus on casting on. So casting on is what happens, is how you put your stitches onto your needle to get started with a project. There are all different sorts of cast on techniques, but the one that we are going to cover is called the long tail cast on. It's a pretty popular cast on used for a lot of different projects. So for the long tail cast on, what you're going to need is your yarn, prepped and ready to go, and your needle. So for the long tail cast on, what you're going to do is you are going to grab the yarn, and you want to leave a long tail so you have enough yarn to cast onto your needles. So what that means is that when you are casting on, you are using the yarn that comes right from your skein, and then you're also using another little group of yarn here. So you're kind of working with two pieces of yarn at the same time. So you want to give yourself a lot of extra yarn so you have enough to cast on 30 stitches. So once you have mine, I'll just kind of give you an idea. It looks like this. So this should be enough yarn for 30 stitches. So I'm just going to kind of group that together and just kind of set it over here. So then you're going to see our long tail yarn here, the long tail, connected to our skein of yarn. So the very first thing that we need to do to put the first stitch on our needle is to do a slip knot. If you are not familiar with a slip knot, here's an easy way to do it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the yarn and I'm going to kind of fold it over itself so that you see we have our little pile of yarn here, our skein, and this loop in the middle. Okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up this loop and I'm going to just place it over the tail so I have what looks like a little pretzel. So you can kind of see I have this little loop, this little pretzel. So it's sitting on top of the yarn that's coming from our skein. So now that I have that little pretzel, all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the center part of that pretzel, like so. And if I grab our tails, you're going to see I have a loop and our knot here, and then the two tails of yarn. So once I do that, this is going to become my first stitch. All I'm going to do is just place that on the needle, and then I'm going to just pull these ends so they're snug against the needle but not too tight. So all I did, you can do this, you can kind of hold the needle and pull this way, whatever is comfortable for you. So you'll see now I have one stitch on my needle that came from that slip knot. Okay, so now once I have that, you're going to see that I have two tails of yarn here. I have the tail coming down to this little pile of yarn here, and then I have the tail going directly to the skein. So we are going to be working with both of those pieces of yarn when we cast our stitches on. So put your needle into your right hand. Even if you're left-handed, you're still going to put your needle into your right hand. I'm going to put the slip knot kind of just above where the needle gets wider here because we want to be careful that it doesn't just slip right off. So I have one stitch on my needle already. So now to cast on the rest of my stitches, I'm going to use these two fingers. So I have our two tails, whoopsies. I'm just gonna, that might happen to you too. So all I'm gonna do is just slip it right back on the needle, okay? So with my thumb and forefinger, I'm going to come between those two yarn tails so it looks something like this. Okay, they're separating those two yarn tails. With my other three fingers, I'm just gonna kind of wrap them around those two tails just so that I can keep them stable and from not moving around too much. So it looks like this. You'll see I almost have like a kite shape in the yarn between my thumb and my forefinger. So I have to use both of these strands of yarn to cast on my stitches. With the needle tip, I am going to come around the outside of my thumb. I'm going to push the needle through that loop created by my thumb, and then I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to pick up this piece of yarn that's around my index finger. I'm going to go behind the loop and then I'm going to bring it back through toward me. I'm going to do that a bunch more times, so don't worry if you didn't catch it that time. Again, my thumb and forefinger are between the two tails of yarn. I'm securing the tails with my other 3 fingers. I have this kite shape here. With my needle tip, I'm going to pull the needle tip towards me, and I'm going to pick up that yarn that's around my thumb. I push the needle away from me to get to my pointer finger so that I can grab that piece of yarn attached to my pointer finger, and then I come back through the loop made by my thumb, and then I let it go and I pull it snug but not too tight. That's really important here. When people are first learning, their reaction is automatically to pull really tight and really kind of crank on that yarn to make it really snug. You want it to be snug but not too tight. You want your stitches to move freely on the needle. So now you can see I have 3 stitches, and here I am again. Okay, I'm going to come around by my thumb, pick up that loop that's on my thumb, push the needle away to pick up the strand of yarn around my forefinger, and then I come back through. You'll see there's a little window there. So I'm pulling my needle toward me through that window. And again, I pull it snug, but not too tight. Okay, so you can kind of see where we're going there. I'm going to bring my thumb and forefinger through, secure the yarn. Again, I pick up this loop, I pick up this loop, and I come back through the window. I want to do that until I have 30 stitches on my skein of yarn, or on my needles. We're going to be working with 30 stitches so that we have a nice width for our scarf. Okay, so again, there are your 2 yarn tails. You're going to bring your thumb and pointer finger through, secure the yarn. I pull the needle toward me so I can pick up this loop on the outside of my thumb. I push the needle away toward my pointer finger. I grab that loop right there, and then I come back through that window made by my thumb. Okay, I'm going to just do a couple a little bit faster so you can just kind of see the motion. Casting on is one of those things that I recommend to new knitters to cast on a bunch of stitches, take them off your needle, and start over, and do it a bunch of times, because it's one of those things that it does take a little bit to get the hang of it, but once you get it, it comes really easily. If you're just sitting around and watching a show or have some downtime, just practice casting on. Cast on a bunch of stitches, take them off, and do it again. Okay, again, we're going outside of the thumb, through that loop, push it away toward the pointer finger, grab the loop on your pointer finger, and come back through the window made by your thumb. So we're going to do that until we have 30 stitches. Again, you're pulling snug, but not too tight. To count your stitches, you're simply counting the loops that are going over your needle. So here's a stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So yours should look a little something like that. So we're going to come back together the next video and learn how to knit your first row. So again, if you are getting stuck with casting on, just stop here and practice it a bunch of times. Watch the video a couple of times so that you feel really confident with it. And again, if you need further help, please don't hesitate to reach out. So cast on, you're at this point, you want to have 30 stitches on your needle. Remember to pull snug, but not too tight. And I will see you for our next video, which is how to knit your first row.